Welcome to Practically Christian. I'm Luke, and I'm here with my wife Janelle.
Hi, guys.
And my friend Jake.
Hey.
We share conversations that help you know Jesus more deeply and follow him more faithfully. The truth is, no one has arrived at Christ-likeness. To grow in that direction, we believe you need authentic relationships and biblical theology applied to your everyday life. We hope that you're encouraged to grow and to live out the biblical truths that we will be discussing on this episode. So let's get practical and dive into a conversation about gluttony.
So as we're going to talk about gluttony this week, and for a lot of people, people are either emotional eaters or emotional non-eaters. Are you more of an emotional eater or an emotional non-eater, or a mix of both? And if so, like, what emotions cause you to eat or not?
Yeah, I'm an emotional eater. Like when people are like, I was stressed out, so I didn't eat. I'm like mystified. I'm like, wait, what?
I'd say I'm a mix. I think when I'm unhealthy with eating, it's usually because it's available and it's like mindless kind of thing. But I think if I'm on my own and I have to go get my own food and prepare my own food, like when Luke, back in the day before we had kids, and Luke would like go to youth camp, I would just not eat anything until I was like starving, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna eat some crackers now, or like where it was like delayed until desperate, and then just minimal whatever I can grab real fast, and it wasn't necessarily like excessive amount. It was just like I guess I need sugar in my blood system, so mix of both. How about you,
Jake?
When I'm sad, I do not eat. And then other negative emotions can make me eat, specifically sugar. But
if you're angry, you get candy?
Yes. Or stressed. Yes. Sad, I think my record was like 50 hours without eating because I was sad, and I just like, the thought of eating made me want to like vomit. Anyways. So I'm definitely on that side of things when sad. So Luke, can you go ahead and read Proverbs 23, 1 through 3?
Sure. It says, when you sit down to eat with a ruler, observe carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are given to appetite. Do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food.
Yeah. So this kind of has two things going on here, which is we see like people can use food or like luxuries to like deceive people. And also, for some reason, we can be deceived by food and deceived by like things that we want in food. So what can be deceptive about food, or how can it be used to deceive?
I mean, when I've read that proverb in the past, I thought of it more as like you think that the conversation that you're having with the ruler is the main thing that the ruler is observing, but he's actually observing you more holistically, and you being greedy with how much you eat says something about you as a person. That's how I understood it. And like, it reminds me of, I don't know if you guys have heard of, some people do interviews where they take people out to lunch for the interview, and they intentionally like beforehand had arranged that they would bring the person the wrong dish or whatever, and then see how they react to kind of get a read on who they are, apart from like your interviewed prepared speeches about how great you are as an employee. Like if you snap or get, or if you just don't even do anything, or like, are you assertive, those kinds of things. That's how I read it. But so I don't explain how you read it.
So when I look at it, I kind of think about like the ruler using food and delicacies as a way to like manipulate you. But I think that you might be reading it correctly too.
So like if you want to be in with me and have this beautiful life, with all these delicacies.
Yes, that's why
it's like whining and dining.
Yeah, that's why I feel like put the knife to your throat is like notice what's going on.
Yeah,
like there's something deeper, like going on. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
It's one actually interesting thing about Proverbs is that both of those things might be like correct in a way to read the proverb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think? What can be deceptive, or like what can like in some sense, or revealing about how we treat food? Like we're like revealing about us from how we treat food.
I mean, I think, like we said, if you observe, when you're sad, you tend to avoid food. Maybe if you were less observant of your emotional state, but you notice that you're not interested in eating,
Mhm.
it can kind of be like a signal,
Mhm.
like, hey, like maybe you're feeling sad right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or like if you are feeling stressed and you're eating a bunch of junk food
Yeah.
and you're like, wait, I'm not actually hungry for another piece of candy or another, piece of junk food. Like maybe it's almost like an external thing that you can observe and then say, what am I stressed about? Maybe I need to like engage with my emotional state.
Like a car making a weird noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like something's off. Let me consider what that might be. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that came to mind when you said what can be deceptive about food is how often certain foods look good but aren't good. It's like that donut looks yummy, and then you eat it and you're like, I don't feel good.
I don't know if it was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sometimes when I eat or want sugar and I'm like, what is the point of eating something that tastes good if it like goes away and it's unhealthy?
Yeah.
Like there's no like as someone who's like eats sugar, like I'm like, but like it's so not long lasting. It's like what's the point?
Yeah, it's almost like you're looking for a certain feeling.
Yeah.
And it's such a temporary solution to give you a feeling of goodness.
Whereas like there's a difference between like eating food that tastes good and is good for you versus food that just tastes good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about gluttony, we most often talk about food. But I kind of think in some ways we can think about drunkenness as gluttony for alcohol or gluttony for wine, right? Are there any other things that you think tap into the same temptation as gluttony besides just food and alcohol? Or no?
Yeah, it's a weird question because, like, I think technically speaking, gluttony is about food.
Yeah.
But maybe the same heart issues that result in gluttony could result in overindulging in other things. So if that's like where we're talking about like overindulgence, I think this relates to the last episode from 2 weeks ago where we talked about sloth and binging, like TV shows or movies, like
Or shopaholic
yeah,
tendencies where you're basically like binging the feeling you get from getting something new, even though you don't need more stuff or you're buying things that aren't wise for you to purchase.
yeah, or drugs, like not even unhealthy ones, like coffee, or I guess that's a form of food though. Is that counts food?
I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
You're the one making the rule.
Caffeine. Overindulging in caffeine.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, actually, if you have ever learned about the Enneagram, they say each of the types has a sin associated with it, but sevens are associated with gluttony, but it's not necessarily about food. It can be about experiences, even like the typical unhealthy seven is like planning their next vacation while they're on vacation. Like they're not present to what they're doing because they're planning the next one because it's not satisfying. They just want more, more, more. And so it's always like in the planning phase for some other new excitement that's going to be better than what I'm doing now. But so I think experiences could be that way.
Yeah, and I think they maybe I think Luke's right. Like gluttony is like food, right? So I think alcohol kind of like fits kind of close to that sometimes, like in a way. And I think that there are like other things like experiences, entertainment, being big ones that can like kind of like tie into the same thing. But a lot of it's about like short term feeling, or short term satiation or good feeling, in the place of like actual good things, or like ignoring bad things a lot of the time. So like what do you think is so tempting about food then? Like why, if gluttony is just true, like if gluttony is about food, like why? What's so tempting about it?
I mean, there is a real physiological response to eating food. So I think like it's a little bit like, that feels good. Like it's a little mini comfort, So I think it's like, it's real. Like you said, it's temporary. And if it's in place. Like, for instance, if you're stressed out and you're eating junk food because you're stressed out, it's not doing anything to resolve the source of your stress or coming to peace with the fact that this bad thing happened, or, you know, like, even if there's nothing to fix the problem, like, there's no,
Like the stereotypical eating ice cream after a breakup.
yeah, it's like, it's not necessarily like helping you emotionally or with grief or with any of these actual sources. So I think it's like a mismatched cure, basically. It's saying, like, I'm going to eat because that makes me feel good, even though I'm feeling bad in this other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is also like a level of, and I think we think about it less because we always have food, but there's a sense of control in eating too much.
Yeah.
It's, I have power, I have control to do this, and I'm not going to run out of food. I think especially for like the ancient Israelites, that probably would have been a big thing. It's like, I mean, we even see like in the, it's not entirely gluttony, but in the, when they're walking in the Exodus and people take extra bread because they're not sure it's going to be there tomorrow because they're trying to control the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is similar to what Janelle said, but like, I think, yeah, it's like it's a distracting experience. So it makes it where you can, or I should say first person, it makes it for me where it's like I can focus on the sensations of eating and the flavors I'm experiencing. And it's like, this is good. And like, that lets me ignore the other stressful thing or the other thing I'm trying to escape from in some ways. Yeah, it's like an escapist thing for me. Anyway.
So I think as we've talked about all of these, we've kind of, and we're through 6 of them. And I think gluttony might be the one that the church is the most okay with in America, right? I think pride is probably close, but like not necessarily as I think our whole society is pretty okay with all of them, but especially the church seems to have no problems with gluttony. Some like quick stats that, you know, like there are different like numbers that float around, but they're kind of like the average stats is like 74% of Americans are considered overweight. 43% are considered obese. I don't even know what the difference between those two things are. But
I mean, they're just like
obese is like a higher level. Yeah. Why do you think the church can tend to give a pass to gluttony?
I read an article about this a long time ago, and I don't even know the source of it, so sorry, I can't be more specific. But one of the things it showed was Christian young people tended to be more obese than the general population. But they had a few possible reasons that they gave for it, based on interviews that they conducted. One of the things said Christians focus on like your spiritual identity and like almost back to our previous episode that we did a long time ago about the body like being discounted, where it's like, oh, the most important thing about you, Jake, is your spirit, so your body doesn't matter, which is Gnosticism.
Yep.
But it's something that like a lot of people, they're like, well, you're not your body, you're
the soul inside the body,
inside you, and so if you can care for your soul without caring for your body, which is separating the body and the soul in a way that God integrated when he made us. So in some ways it could be partly related to that, where it's like we're so focused on the spiritual aspects that we think that those are divorced from our physical body in a way that's actually not real in the way that God made us. But also, like, in some ways, there's some truth to it in the sense of, like, if you know a person really well, like, who they are is so much more than whether they're fat or skinny or athletic or not. Like, those are aspects of them that are significant, but they're not nearly as significant as their character. But they are integrated. Like, you are a person who is active or not, or gluttonous or not. So I think it's just, it's complex, and we kind of want it to be super simple.
I think it's also kind of unfortunate that the church has taken in this idea from culture that your physical health is only related to how attractive you are. When it's like so much more than that. It's like I think in the church we often hear like, oh, well, you shouldn't worry about how overweight someone is because it's what inside that matters. And it's like, yes, but like their health matters and how they take care of themselves matters.
Right.
And like it's not just an attraction thing, it's a lot deeper
Yeah.
of how they take care of themselves often.
Yeah, and sometimes there's medical
Mhm.
reasons or chemical reasons for being overweight as well, but a lot of times it can be an indicator of what is going on
Mhm.
underneath. So it's actually like a false dichotomy to say what's inside matters, not what's outside. It's like,
Mhm.
no, like what's outside is revealed, but or
By what's on the
yeah.
inside.
Yeah,
Well, similar to what we talked about last episode with sloth.
It's like
Where
sometimes
it's
it
like,
can be a sign,
yeah.
but not always.
If you have a disheveled, appearance, maybe that's because you're neglecting your appearance, or maybe it's because you just ran away from a bear, and that's why you have a disheveled appearance.
Or you're living in your car because you ran away. You had to like leave your house situation,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. I will say, I think we are in a society where convenience foods are unhealthy foods.
Mhm.
And we also have a lot of people who have very
Crazy work
time-consuming
hours, yeah.
jobs and family life and
hmm
sports commitments. And so I think there is just the practical reality of like the foods that are most easily available to, and even sometimes more affordable foods can sometimes be less healthy. So I think that's like a unfortunate, like if it was like back in the day, if you were poor, you were skinny. And that's not the case anymore because a lot of our inexpensive convenience
Mhm.
foods are unhealthy foods.
That's why, regardless of political things, we can feel happy that RFK is going to be in charge of the FDA or whatever.
Well, you were asking about like why does the church give a pass on gluttony? So I just thought of this. I hadn't put this together before, but the value of hospitality is in some ways, or at least the way we practice it, at odds with like guarding against gluttony. Like what does it mean to be hospitable when you have someone over?
To not run out of food.
Yeah, it means like providing more than enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, or even if you think about church functions, at least in our church, it's like we have good food. People bring lots of yummy food, and that's the way of being generous and sharing their favorite things that they make and baking something nice to bring to share. And then we have this like feast mode that we share as a church family. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah.
And I think social eating is a reality too for people.
That was actually what Connor and Emma, some friends of ours who moved down to Texas, they were like, when they moved down there, Connor was really annoyed because he was like, the only thing people do to hang out is go to restaurants. Like, there's nothing else to do in Lubbock, Texas. And that just might be because it's Lubbock, Texas. But, yeah.
They also said it seemed like when they tried to do like hosting and like everyone would bring something, like people didn't know how to cook like decent food. Like it was all like weird and unhealthy food.
So if you're a listener and you're from Texas, prove us wrong. Show us your recipes.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because like this might sound really judgmental and terrible potentially, but I don't mean it to. If we found out a pastor was having an affair, we would not let them be a pastor anymore. If we found a pastor was hoarding money and was extremely greedy, we probably wouldn't want them to be a pastor. But there are lots of famous pastors who are very overweight. What's the difference there for us?
I will say it's interesting. There was a pastor I was listening to on a podcast, and he was very overweight, and I think he started having some physical like problems from it and was convicted about it. And then he like totally changed, and now he's like a fitness person. But it was interesting because he said that when he made that transformation, there was a subset of people who didn't really respect his voice before, who began to respect his voice as he started taking care of his body. Because I think there's like a witness element. Like if you're someone who values physical fitness and you
see a pastor.
Who is like obviously neglecting their physical fitness. I don't know. That there's like I want to say it's even probably below that conscious, like, I don't respect you because you're fat. Like, I don't think they would ever say that. But there's a reality to where a subset of people couldn't really hear. It was an obstacle to trusting him as a voice.
Yeah. Well, there's this funny thing that happens, and I don't know why it does. I have some theories about why it does, but I knew someone a while ago who, when they started losing weight, and they were a Christian, they started losing a lot of weight, and then people were like, "Why are you doing that? You're beautiful just the way you are." And they were like, "Because I want to," and they were like, "Don't feel pressured." And it was like people like trying to like get them to not because they like assumed that something was wrong when they started trying to lose weight.
Well, I think it's delicate because I think there is a lot of unhealth on the other side. Like, and I think this is something we've talked about before with when we talked about that same episode on the body and the Christian understanding of the body. But I think you can assume if someone looks a certain way that they're physically healthy, and that's totally not true.
And now that is not true especially because of steroids.
Yeah.
Where the people who are the most in shape are also
it could be
the least healthy person on the planet.
It could also be eating disorders, which are very common and increasing in the male population as well as like they are primarily female population problem. But yeah, I just think I thought it was actually really funny when I was working back before I had kids. I was at this medical school and there were a bunch of like the staff people wanted to do like a health challenge community thing. And I looked more fit than the rest of them. But I am not more fit than the rest of them. Like I just like happen to look more fit than the rest of them because of genes, basically.
Yeah.
And they're like, "You can be our leader." And I was like, you don't know me. I'm not a fit person, but they like wanted me to like be their
poster
child, like leader person to like give people guidance on physical fitness. And I was like, you are deceived. Deceived by appearances, really, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the difficult part because there is like genetics gets into this. Like your body shape is like a lot to do with your genetics. Like people carry weight differently and you know, all those things. There's like complicating factors. And then Jake, back to your question about like, you know, pastor who's overweight, it's difficult because I think we know that gluttony is like a heart issue, right? Like there could be two people at the same church potluck eating the same amount.
And being the same weight.
And looking the same even.
Yeah.
But there's different things going on in their hearts with why they're putting things in their mouth. And I don't know. I think that makes it like tricky to address or call each other out for.
So that perfectly leads up to our next thing, which is what should the church's response be to overeating and gluttony?
Teaching on Gnosticism and how it's wrong.
And how it's wrong. That's fair.
I think that's part of it. I think honestly too, people who are overweight sometimes already are judging themselves super hardcore. And so...
Which can often be the cycle of I hate myself or I'm mad at myself.
Or I hate what I look like.
Yeah. And so I'm going to be sad, so I'm going to eat.
Yeah, so I feel like it's delicate. And I think this is true of, honestly, any sin that's entrenched in someone's life. It's delicate, right? You're not just going to go up and be like, you're a lustful sinner, you disgusting person. Like, that's not going to help them. Like, and it's also not how God views them. Like, God loves them and cares about them and knows the heart things that have gone on to contribute to their current state, whatever it is. And so I think it needs to be handled with gentleness, but I do think... I think the church should be willing to talk about hard things, even if they're unpopular or difficult or delicate, because that's where real life happens. Almost everything that's worth addressing in your life has some delicacy and some sensitivity, and it's hard. I think there should be more opportunities to talk about that. Actually, when I was in Ireland, this is random, but it was part of their mission to women. And it was a very small like village church basically, but one of their mission things to women was going on while I was visiting, and they did like, I think they called it like Fit for Life or something, and it was like almost like a women's get together like activity workout thing with a Bible study. I'm not recommending this to all the churches, but I do think like women in general are attracted to social gathering and to taking care of their physical bodies in a social setting that's comfortable. And then it was like bringing that together with a Bible study. And like, I just thought it was an interesting approach because I had never seen anything like that in the US. But I know they've done different, like one of the famous women's speakers. She basically started out her ministry doing some kind of like, it was almost like a fitness weekend for the church ladies, and then also teaching from the Bible. I don't know. Maybe we need to do more stuff like that within the church community that connects those two things.
Yeah, because it's like this difficult thing you said, Janelle, where I think gluttony is a big problem.
Yeah.
But then I think body image issues are also a big problem.
Yep.
And
there's also the level of like, you could eat relatively fine, and if you have a lot of sloth, you could also end up in the same position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're also pushing back on a culture that says you must be beautiful to be worth anything. Because I feel like our culture is...
Christians are pushing back on that, is what you say.
No, I just don't know if our culture is saying that.
I think our culture doesn't say it verbally. It doesn't say it verbally. It says it with all the images. So it's like, they're like, oh, just be you. You're beautiful how you are. And then here's a movie star. Like...
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like the mixed message.
I don't know. You missed out on Lizzo being on Mandalorian season 3.
Oh man.
I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't either. I just. But yeah, no, there is the pressure in both ways, and I would say both the pressure both ways. Whether it's like you have to be this object of super attraction, which again, gluttony is way bigger, and physical health is way bigger than like physical attraction. Right. And then on the other side, it's you're beautiful just the way you are. You're actually bad if you try to be healthier.
Yeah.
And it's like both sides of that, but both of them are stagnating. It's don't change because you're beautiful the way you are, or don't change because you can't do it. And it's like they're I think Satan often like his goal isn't necessarily to make sure that we believe lies. It's to make sure that we don't do anything when we find out the lies.
Yeah.
We don't change anything. So I'm going to read Matthew 4:1-4. This is Satan talking to Jesus after his 40 days of fasting. So then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." And Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." So there is like this connection between food being the thing that sustains us and I think Jesus and fasting both kind of like Jesus says, and fasting has like kind of the connotation of, no, God is what sustains you. Also, food is important. Right?
Yeah.
So what do you think, or I would say, how can fasting help us to have a healthier view of food and to, in some sense, like help us to fight against gluttony the rest of the time when you're not fasting?
I mean, on a practical level, there's like a self-control thing. Like you're practicing the self-control of not eating, setting aside time to do that. And at least for me, I think it is like a visceral lesson of like, wow, even though sometimes I feel like I need to eat something, I actually don't. Like, I'll be fine.
Yeah, it's like practicing self-denial when it comes to food.
Yeah. And breaking the dependency on it.
Yeah, I think I found that when we started fasting more frequently together, I found that I can recognize like hunger passes. Whereas before, I used to think hunger is just going to last until I eat. And like, I think fasting taught me like, you can feel really hungry and then you're going to stop feeling hungry. It's okay to like not feed yourself just because. But I think part of it was honestly like I had been pregnant and nursing after each other and I needed a lot of calories for that. And I think it had trained me to like, you're hungry, you must eat. And that was true for a time in my life. But like, I think because I did that for how many years? 5.5 years where I like needed to eat food all the time. I think it had set my mind in a way that wasn't true to just life in general. So I think that can be part of it. I think too, there's like almost like a recognizing a physical limitation, which I think is healthy. I think fasting highlights your limitation. It's like you feel the weakness of your physical state and your need. I think sometimes if you just are eating every day, like you don't, it's almost just an assumption. And especially in our culture where most people are not going hungry, although food insecurity is a real thing. And I know some people listening to this podcast may have like experienced or regularly experiencing food insecurity, but just in general, like the average person in the US is not feeling that way. And they tend to maybe just assume that I have all this power and I'm like this Energizer bunny and keep going and going. When really, like, I think we're supposed to feel the frailty of our state, and our mortality is almost like more viscerally present to us when we fast. What would you say?
I think fasting can help us to realize like the unhealthy coping mechanisms that we have and the emotions that we don't know we have. Because people often use food to cover up emotions, whether it be sugar or whatever. And then if you don't have access to that for 1 to 3 days and you're snapping at people where you feel less regulated, you might be feeling a lot of the emotions that you're like covering up normally. And also, like, it's stressful, not on your body. It's actually very good for your body and it's a relaxation for your body, but it's very stressful on your mind to like exert the self-control to not eat. And I think it makes people confront a lot of their unhealth that they may never confront otherwise.
Interesting.
But I could resonate with all those things. It sounds like you don't as much, Janelle.
I don't.
Do you think it's like a guy, girl?
Or maybe I just haven't done longer fasts as much as you guys. Maybe I should try that, even though I don't want to.
They say that if you fast for 3 days, it helps you fight pre-cancer cells. So
I have some hypoglycemia, so I don't know
that's fair.
how I would do. But I don't know. Yeah, I think I could see. I'm a very physical person, so like I think I can get snappy when I'm hungry, but that's just in general. So I don't know. Like I feel like a little disconnect because sometimes I'm snappy because I'm hungry. And that's like normal for me to feel. I get very irritable if I'm hungry. And I don't think that's necessarily like revealing a deeper thing that I haven't dealt with. It's like a physical reaction that's connected emotionally. So like I literally like turn white and like I have all of these. I think I have like a mild hypoglycemia. But it does like affect me emotionally as well. So, but then it's like you're saying like that's connected to.
I'm not saying that specifically, but I'm saying that like that there can be a lot of like like people when you fast and you're not able to, number one, cover stuff up with food, and number two, you're adding like more self-control. It like takes away from, in some sense, your reserve of self-control for when you're in traffic, and takes away from your self-control when you're like I think me and my roommate fasted for a good bit, and at the end of it we were both like unless people have a medical problem, I have a lot less like empathy for people, or I guess sympathy for people who are hangry. It's like, it's okay. You don't need to eat lunch. Like I know lunch is good, but like you don't like, and so there's like
or I think there's truth to, and I've found this even when I'm just, and I think it's a legitimate like physical reaction to being hungry is to feel irritable. But I think it doesn't excuse.
It's like
it doesn't excuse sin.
Yes,
so, like,
exactly.
If I'm hangry and I start being rude to somebody, that's my problem. That's not their problem. Like, and I should take accountability for that. Like, if just because I was hungry when I reprimanded my children a little too strongly for what they were doing, that's something I should apologize for, and that it's my responsibility to deal with that, even though I might have physical reasons that contributed to my state of mind at the time.
Well, there's also like I think a level of like, even let's say like you do get more irritable when you get hungry, right? Most people do. Even if that's not a deeper truth or whatever, it's actually giving you a good place to practice self-control against anger. Or like being snappy when you're not hungry. Like it like, I don't know. I'm a big fasting proponent. I think it's cool.
Mhm.
I also hate it.
Yeah, I think it's not practiced widely by Christians, and it should be.
Yeah.
Like when you fast,
Well,
is what Jesus says.
which kind of leads us into our, so it's true. Like Jesus says, when you fast, and says that when they ask why his disciples aren't fasting, he says they will fast when I'm gone.
Yeah.
So the application this week is very, very simple, which is to fast for food for 24 hours in a row.
In a row, come on.
Yeah, I felt like I had to add the words in a row. That's why it's called breakfast, because you break fast. But yeah, so I really like Richard Foster's idea on this, where he says, like, if you haven't fasted for 24 hours before, or you haven't done it a few times, what you do is eat early dinner at like 5 p.m., be done by 6, and then fast until the next dinner and eat at 6 p.m. So you're skipping 2 meals. That's a good, like, introductory way to, like, do your first fast. But yeah, I would, we talked about fasting this summer, and a lot of people are intimidated by it. And I think it's one of those things that's, once you do it, it's less intimidating.
Yeah.
And
I think it's gearing up for it is way more difficult than actually doing it.
Well, see, and the other problem is, like, actually doing it. Like, I'm a person who cannot eat for 18 hours and be fine and not think about it. And as soon as I'm like, I'm going to fast, it's like an hour. And I'm like, I'm going to start thinking about it. Like, just because it's like, I can't.
Yeah.
But it is like a mental thing, and it's a good training thing, and it's healthy for your body. So that's the goal, is fast for 24 hours this week. One time, and then kind of maybe before you break fast, because it can be very easy, especially at the end of a fast, to focus on the food that shall be coming. Like, pray and reflect about your thoughts and about your walk with Christ before you break the fast.
Do you drink coffee when you're fasting?
I do drink coffee when I fast normally, but I have to really, really work to not drink too much, because if I drink like 2 cups of coffee while fasting, I get itchy everywhere.
Interesting.
Like, it feels like I'm like it's kind of like the stereotypical, like, drug addict like feeling, where it's like my body just does not like caffeine on an empty stomach, and if it's empty for a long period of time and I have like 3 cups of coffee, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening?
That's crazy.
Interesting.
So if you are going to drink coffee, which some people don't think you should, I think it's fine.
But it has to be black.
It has to be black coffee. That's true. Because of calories.
Or black tea.
Or black tea. Yeah. Be careful with it, because you might not know how your body reacts to having caffeine without food.
Truth.
Also, yeah, 0 calorie sweeteners, also a no.
Yep.
It's still a thing. So
I don't know why, but
I don't know.
It makes your body thinks it's food, even though it's 0 calories.
so it kicks.
So it kicks in.
Yeah.
Metabolism and digestion.
It'll actually make it harder to fast. My dad was asking if, like, he could eat celery while fasting, and I was like, if you haven't fasted before, you can go ahead and do that. Like, if you want to. Like, I was like, it'll make it worse. Yeah. Like, it's not a benefit to eat celery while fasting. It's actually just going to make it hard. Like, it might just make it harder. But I think there are some people, like my dad has like some diabetic stuff, and so he's like, celery will help my body to regulate itself. It's like,
although my mom has been fasting because she has diabetes, and it's helping.
It reduces, fasting reduces your insulin resilience, and so it's probably the best way to not have diabetes or stop diabetes.
Yeah, I remember her and my dad started doing it like pretty regularly, and then she had some like weird health thing happen, but it's because she was taking too much insulin.
Yeah,
and the doctor was like, "No, you've gotten better. Like, you can take less."
Yeah,
I hope that's okay to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they've shown that fasting, like, there's a thing called autophagy. If you fast for 3 days, around that time, your body will reabsorb cells that aren't working properly, also known as precancerous cells. And it's not like a solution to cancer, but it does, like, help you resist, like, getting cancer. Anyways, and heal your body in, like, different ways. Sorry.
It's a silver bullet.
It's a silver bullet. It works no matter what, on everything. You should not do any research and just listen to my words. Also, buy my fasting program. Anyways, so now all this talking about gluttony and fasting. What is your most underrated, like, dish or food? Most underrated food dish.
Everyone throws shade on French fries because they're unhealthy.
Okay.
But if you bake them, they taste just as good if you love potatoes as much as I do. And they're not unhealthy.
They don't taste just as good.
I think they taste better.
They taste relatively as good.
I like them.
Do you use beef tallow with them?
I just do spray.
We just do spray.
I want to try it with the tallow once I get some.
Because that's what the secret was. Like for McDonald's, their secret for their French fries used to be, before they got in trouble for it, was they would take the beef drippings from their burgers and put it in the fry oil. That's why that is like the secret French fry thing is beef fat.
I'll have to try it. But even just with spray oil, I just love potatoes, so I like them just salt and pepper, garlic powder. Good. How about you?
I don't know. All the foods that are coming to mind are not that underrated, I think.
Bran muffins.
Bran muffins, yeah. I've been baking those recently. Like, we found a copycat recipe for the Mimi's. If you've ever been to Mimi's, they have like these oat bran muffins. They serve them upside down, so they look funny. But they are really good. So good. Bran muffins. It's good.
I remember I asked my friend Zach this question. He was like, burnt ends. And I was like, Zach, burnt ends are not underrated. Like, everyone likes them. Like,
burnt ends of what?
They're like burnt ends of, like, it's like a beef roast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's of ribs. That's what it is. Is it ribs or a beef roast or something like that? It's like the end that normally they don't serve on that dish. But they're not underrated. Like, everyone likes them. I saw a burnt end sausage at the store the other day. And I bought it, and it was good. Okay. I'm gonna throw out there homemade popcorn.
Yeah.
Like not like microwave popcorn, but like homemade popcorn that's just got like oil and salt.
Yeah.
Do you do it with coconut oil?
Bacon grease.
Bacon grease? Wow.
Never tried that.
And bacon grease, and then I still put butter on it afterwards.
We just do coconut oil or canola oil even. But
he doesn't like cooking with.
I don't use vegetable oil. It's bad for you.
Oh, that's right.
Anyways, so
all the good stuff.
Does one of you guys want to pray for us to close?
You?
Sure. God, we thank you for walking with us in the midst of our struggles with various sins, Lord. And I do pray against gluttony in our lives, Lord. I pray that you'd help us to identify areas that we have unhealthy tendencies toward gluttony, and that you help us to change, Lord. You have that power to transform us from the inside. Help us to identify the causes and the stressors and the other things that are maybe driving us to seek comfort in food that is meant to be found in you. And I pray that you would guide us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.